Welcome to Gillian and Chantal's Swim the Solent 2024 podcast. Here in episode 1, let's set the scene for the challenge ahead.
Hi, Gillian.
Hello, Chantal. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm sitting here, having had a busy day of training, quite indulgent really, because Mondays are a light working day for me. Sometimes it's kind of a day when I bring in contingency plans when I need to, but today I actually had time. So instead of spending it on the sofa, I did started the morning at 6 with the run, and then had the dogs out for another walk, and then had another swim in the afternoon. So a busy day, and for once I kind of don't feel guilty that I'm not on top of my training, which is a really nice feeling.
That's
How
the
about
thing,
you?
isn't it?
How's your Monday?
Well, that's the thing. Well, I started off similarly. You're saying 6 o'clock. So I thought to myself, it was quite nice. I feel like getting up early. I'm actually going to go swimming early. Also, because I was going to try and spend more time in the water. So normally I get to the pond, Booker's Pond, for about 6:30, but I actually got there for 6:15 this morning until about 7:30. And
Amazing.
it felt really, really great, although very cold. So I don't know how you're feeling at the moment, Gillian, but when I went into the water, and I'm thinking we're June, and actually it felt a bit chilly. And when I came out after doing my 3 circuits, about 3K, I've been in the water for an hour and a half, I was actually starting to feel a bit cold. So I don't know how you've been feeling the water at the river.
Yeah, it's really cold, Chantal, colder than I remember on previous years. Of my last few swims, I swim every Saturday morning. I have a lovely bunch of ladies who congregate at 8, and they just have a dip and a cup of coffee after. But what I try to do is get down there earlier, and have a decent swim. So I'm in the
Okay.
water when we arrive, then I join in with a bit of chat, and then we have breakfast. But anyway, getting back to the point, the temperature I recorded on Saturday was 12 degrees, uh,
Wow.
which I think is a lot cooler than previous Junes.
Yes.
The river the last few days has been 13 degrees, but it hasn't felt any warmer, possibly to do with the flow as well, because the river has a little bit more flow to it. Yeah, it's really cold, which is making it very challenging to get the distance in. Because you and I both know it's just not sensible to stay in cold water for too long.
I know.
It's a lot of risks with it. You and I are both mums. We have jobs.
We do.
Whatever time we do our training in the day, we usually have something that we have to have our heads and our hearts back in the right place to get on
True.
with our day. So for me, I suppose the anxiety is not being able to do very long swims at the moment. Knowing that for me at my pace, I'll probably be in the water for 2.5 to 3 hours from Gosport to the Isle of Wight.
Okay.
And that's because I'm a bit slow. I mean, some of the folk will do it in under 2 hours, but that's certainly not my time. And so I would prefer if I was able to see myself in the water for at least an hour and a half comfortably this time of the year,
Right.
knowing that we're a month away. So yeah, it's hard, but I know you have a slightly different tack. I'm not resorting to neoprene. I'm just going in a swimsuit, which again, the pros and cons of that are debatable, but I know you have a slightly different approach.
Yeah. So, well, strangely, I was in my swimming costume up until the end of March. So when it's freezing cold, I'm always in the water at the pond and everywhere, like breaking ice and everything. And then it gets to normally like April, and then I'm thinking, gosh, now I need to put my neoprene on. And sometimes it's the middle of the summer. Normally my swims are in September, so it's boiling hot. Everyone's in costumes, bikinis, and there I am with my neoprene, like in the water and just doing like these big swims. The reason that I do it is because I'm slightly scared about jellyfish. So, I mean, clearly I've swum with lots of jellyfish, but I just have this thing about being stung by lion's mane and, that sort of thing. And it feels like if I'm wearing all my protection, obviously my face is still could get attacked, so to speak, or stung, but I just feel the rest of me, it means I can focus on my swimming and I'm not worried about creatures and things that might be around me, so my focus can kind of be totally on my swimming. But also, I mean, the thing with the neoprene is it's a lot heavier, and when the water's maybe warmer and it's sunny, it's not as conducive. You don't feel as streamlined, perhaps.
Yeah, it's interesting because neoprene can actually be your friend in the water, not just in terms of keeping you warm, but also because it makes you that much more buoyant. And actually, I've done this swim that we're going to swim in a month's time in neoprene some years and without other years. And I actually swim a lot faster in neoprene.
Okay.
Um, yeah, because you're more buoyant because the neoprene makes you float a little bit higher in the water.
Uh-huh.
So actually in terms of speed, neoprene is the way forward.
Okay.
You're right probably about the streamlining, but just the buoyancy wins over the streamlining. So
Okay.
certainly if you're trying to make time, and actually the reasons I've done it in neoprene some of the years have been because it's been a smaller swim and I've wanted not to drag some of the slower or some of the faster swimmers back. So I've put my suit on in order to just give myself a little bit more speed so that I can stay with them. That's a good reason to wear neoprene. I just don't like it very much, so I'm trying to avoid it. I think the last 2 years I've done it without a wetsuit, and I really enjoyed the experience. And I guess, let's face it, we're going to do this, for some people once in a lifetime, at the most once in a year. And having done all the training, I'm actually not in a rush. I want to enjoy it. And I don't mind, that's why I don't mind being in the water 2.5 or 3 hours. Like, to be in the water under 2 hours, for me, it's sort of, it takes away from the experience. Now, I'm conscious that we have a whole safety crew. We've got kayakers in the water. Each of us has at least one kayaker per swimmer.
That's good.
And we've got safety boats. We've got people on the beach. And of course, they will have to either kayak really slowly, which has to be painful, or stand on the boat for all that time. And that's something to take into consideration. I certainly won't be sort of crawling across just because I feel like enjoying myself, because we need to think about the people who are looking after us and getting them off the water and into the pub, so that they can relax. A bit philosophical about making sure that I mark the experience, that I really, really sort of put my head and my heart into it. So I'm not rushing, but I say if there's any organisers listening, I promise I'm not crawling either. I'm not going to keep you from the pub for too long.
I have some questions, Gillian. So my questions, because you've done it and I haven't. So I have all sorts of images. So my first question, having done distance swims, but not having done it in one go. So obviously I did a maybe similar kind of distance, I don't know, last year, but it was there and back. So with that, you get to stop, stand, have a little look around, and then you're like coming back. Whereas when I'm going to be swimming, it's just going to be in one direction. So, I mean, maybe slightly further, because I know you were saying it's possibly up to 7K or something, obviously depending on tides and that sort of thing. But my question is, when I was standing on Lady Isle, looking back towards the mainland, it did actually look quite far away, and it's very hard to make out where you're swimming to. So I'm thinking, if I'm swimming double that kind of distance in one direction, what's it like? Say let's say it's from Ryde and you're swimming back to Gosport. Do you have landmarks? Do you just literally rely on the kayak? What happens?
I suppose the first thing I'd say, Chantal, the first year I went down, I was actually slightly unimpressed when I stood on the beach and looked over and could see the Isle of Wight far too clearly. It looked
really?
like far away at all. But it still is, a good distance. I would say it's unlikely that we'll end up swimming the full 7, but we could swim into the 6 or so. And remember, Chantal, you're much taller than me, and I think you have a stronger stroke. And when you're going faster, you also have the momentum not to be pushed about by the currents or by the tide. I get pushed about quite a bit because I'm little. And because I'm slow. So sometimes the distance is my own doing, because, as I say, if I can't rev my engines up enough to sort of propel through any of these currents or tidal movement, I end up having to do a bit of a zigzag. And that's where the extra distance comes in. Got a good strong stroke, I would say you're more likely to make a fairly direct crossing. So just to reassure you on that. But getting back to your question about landmarks, it's interesting because, I say, even though I'm only 5'0", I'm back to 4'11.5", if we're really honest. And you're looking over and you can see the island really clearly, or the mainland really clearly, depending on which side you're standing on. And then once you get in the water and you're suddenly doing crocodile eyes, you're just looking up, all you're trying to do is get your eyes out of the water. So you don't see what you expect to see at all. And so you're actually, in the first instance, you're absolutely reliant on your kayakers, and they are brilliant. They will ask you, where would you like them to position themselves to give you the most confidence and advantage? So they will kayak just a little bit in front of you, I would suggest, particularly when it's the first time and you're not sure of direction, and they'll give you the choice of which side. And they may also steer you either at the beginning or during the event to change sides, particularly if the wind is coming from one side. The kayak can give you a little bit of shelter, make your swim a little easier. So your kayaker is absolutely your best friend, and you won't meet them until maybe 10 or 15 minutes before you take this journey together.
Wow.
So my advice to you is make friends with your kayaker. They're there because they want to do this. They're all volunteers. They all have some connection to MND, and they're just the best. And I trust them with my life. I have done 5 times. I'm not prepared to
I know, 5 times, Gillian.
and
Wow.
yeah, but it still makes me worry about the 6. I still don't fully believe it. But anyway, I'm just, the kayaker really is, very important to the swim. And outside of that, then all the kayakers have radios and they're radioing each other. So, I would be down the back of the pack, but I suppose that gives me an advantage in the sense that some of the swimmers are on ahead.
Yes.
They're sending radio messages back to my kayaker to say, look, we've hit the current, or whatever they've come across, or even things like if they come across a gang of jellyfish, your kayaker will help you through that. They're much higher in the water, they're a good meter view down from their sitting position, so they can see things ahead of you that you can't, and they can give that little bit of safety and reassurance. And there are times even with the currents where they might ask you to swim away from your destination. I can remember seeing when you come into Ryde in Gosport, the part of the beach where you're looking to land, there's a big set of double red doors which belong to the lifeboat station.
Okay.
And they say, once you see those red doors looming up on the horizon, you're almost there. But there's been times when the currents have been so strong, and much as I've seen those red doors, they've said to me, you need to swim away from them.
Oh no!
You need to get around this current. And that's where you have to establish trust and take a little bit of leap of faith with this person that you hardly know.
Yes.
Because they're hearing on the radio and what they know themselves, most of them have been doing this for years, is worth so much more than your slightly twisted intuition when you're in the water and your brain's a bit waterlogged.
Yes.
You as you get more tired and you're reaching the end of your destination, like I know inside me I can be a little bit grumpy. I'd be a little bit like, but I can see it and I want to go that way. And you just have to kind of quieten those voices and say, no, trust the kayaker. They know what they're doing. Just do what you do. So the landmarking thing, and there's things like church spires. I think it's worth sort of, and you and I will probably spend some time before we get in the water. Just know the orientation, but just to be aware that when you get in the water, you cannot see what's on the horizon. You're too far low down, and anyway, you need to keep your head down, because the more you bring your head up, the more you lose your momentum, the more you lose your forward motion. So actually having the kayaker to your left or to your right, you can spot them every time you're breathing. They might even give you a gentle nudge with their paddle if they feel you're going the wrong direction, which
okay.
a little bit difficult until I understood they were trying to help me. I felt a bit flattered, but I got my head around it then and realized, no, this is them trying to be helpful, because I was just swimming a little bit too far in the wrong direction. But that's the long answer to the short question. Your kayaker is the secret to your success, I suppose, really.
And I suppose the question that links to that, thinking about this huge swim that I did the distance anyway, nearly 6 hours, 5.5 hours in the water. One of the things when I came out, where you were there to meet me, which was just so lovely when you came swimming out and then we swam in together. That was just brilliant. But when I came out, I felt so dehydrated and just like could hardly move. And obviously I haven't been in so long and battered and bushed about and everything else. So there's two questions that I want to ask. So the first one is that I felt when I was swimming that at one point I was swimming for like over an hour and I haven't moved anywhere. Like I was just constantly just swimming. And I was just against these cross currents and not going anywhere. And then what happened was Gordon, my kayaker, that, gave me some water. So there I'm taking some water. And I realized when I actually got back, and the thing that kept me going was that he said, they're cheering. I said, I feel so sick. I don't think I'm going to be able to. And he said, just keep going, so that's why the kayaker, I know like what you're saying is so important, because when you're just at that point when you just think, I don't know if I can go on. And he really, really supported me and helped me to continue.
I wasn't far from you at that point, but I was sort of at a distance and I could see that you'd stopped and I kind of could guess what was going on.
Yeah.
And it's very hard, that moment, isn't it?
Horrible. That's that real kind of like, he was giving me something to drink and I thought, I just can't. I feel like I'm just going to be sick. And you're just feeling lightheaded and you're feeling nauseous and you're thinking, I'm like, is this ever going to end? I seem to be like, it's just around the corner. It's just around the corner. It never feels like it's actually going to be coming.
Yeah, I suspect that you were tackling a current at that point. Also why I thought I'm going to stay just a little bit of a distance, because the last thing that's going to help you is for me to get caught in the current with you. So again, that's where your kayaker, an experienced kayaker, will be really helpful, because they'll tell you to swim along the current, sort of in a V. And then at the crucial moment, which they will pick, not you, they will ask you to take an about turn, and the current will, and you'll drift across the current and you'll be on the other side and you won't have used up all your energy. So I suspect at that point, it might have been that you were sort of fighting a bit of a losing battle with that current. You didn't lose, you got through it.
I did, yeah.
I find that guys down at the Solent, a lot of them have done the swimming or are swimmers, and they understand sort of the science behind swimming away beyond the current to let the current take you back in and out of it. Almost like we talk about riptides, if you know, until you get beyond it and then you come back around over it. So that's the same sort of thinking around currents. I mean, it's a rip, a current.
And I suppose what you're saying there as well is the fact that going in a direction you feel you're going the wrong way, and that thing of trust where you're then like, but actually that means that you're going to come around and you won't get exhausted and tired because you're not in that losing thing where you're literally up against something and feeling you're not going anywhere and putting all your effort in.
Making progress, or like at this times, you know, they've been asking me to swim sort of at odds or at right angles to the current, but I almost feel, even though I'm sure I'm straight, if anyone's looking at me swimming, I almost feel like my body's bent in a right angle. You know, I almost like from my hips, I'm bent at 90 degrees because I can feel the force of the current and I'm having to battle it. That is actually sometimes what you have to do.
Right.
Swimming straight's going to get you nowhere. In fact,
we hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed recording. Stay tuned for further episodes to come.